from some of our students about what it's like to live and study in Paris, and there'll be an opportunity for a Q&A. I did just want to alert everyone to the fact that there is a chat box. Please start adding some questions in there that you have for our lovely presenters. The icon is on the top right-hand side of your screen. So today we will be hearing from Louise Lyle and Claire Miller. They will be speaking to the programs that we have on offer at the University of London Institute in Paris. And then our student ambassadors, Hind Haji and Nancy Hayman-Nichols, will be speaking to student life, followed by a Q&A. So I will hand over now to Louise Lyle.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Louise Lyle. I'm the admissions tutor at ULIP, primarily for French programs, although I do oversee some activity on the IP admissions also. And I'm a senior lecturer on the French and Comparative Studies side of the academic programme. Okay, so it's great to welcome you all here tonight, and I will run through some of the basics, some of the basic questions that I'm sure you'll have concerning studying at the University of London Institute in Paris, and we hope that you'll, add your questions as and when they occur to you. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, we've been introduced. A common question that people ask is, where are we located in Paris? And we're super central. You might be aware of how Paris is mapped. It's kind of a coil of different districts which are called arrondissements. We are in the 7th arrondissement, which is right in the centre on the south bank. And when people ask me where we are, I like to tell them that we're kind of halfway between the Eiffel Tower and the Musée d'Orsay. Those are two major tourist attractions. You might have seen them if you've been to Paris before, and that gives you a sense of, quite how central we are. And we're close to lots of, major monuments, institutions, cultural destinations. Okay, so next slide, please. As you're possibly already aware, there are two basic strands that you can study with us. First of all, we've got the Bachelor's in International Politics, which is a 3-year programme, originally developed in partnership with Queen Mary University of London and delivered entirely on site at UL Paris, the institute here in Paris. All of the modules on this course are delivered and assessed in English. Okay, now you can do this as single honours, but you can also take it with the minor in French. The other longer established programme is the Bachelor in French Studies. That's taught over 3 years, and it's available with a range of minors: business, history, or international relations. The minors in business and international relations are taught and examined in English, but some of the history modules are taught and examined in French. So depending on the choices that you would make for your options, up to 80% of your courses would be delivered in French if you were taking one of our BA French Studies programs. Okay, next slide, please. Let's start then with the Bachelor's in French Studies. As I mentioned, this is available in a range of, with a range of different minors: business, history, international relations. And yeah, as I've already mentioned, the majority of your courses will be taught in French. You'll be required to do core modules in language, about which I'm going to say a bit more later. But there will also be a range of other options, some of which will be in French, some of which will be in English. Okay, next slide, please. And the Bachelor's International Politics, single honours, 3 years, or with the French minor. Now, the French minor is available to students who have an A-level equivalent qualification in French. So we're looking for you to have 5 to 6 years of high school French, and the French courses are integrated with the students who are on the French Studies programme. Okay, so next slide, please. Coming back to the French Studies programme then, we divide our modules into two basic groups. Language acquisition courses, where the main aim is for you to improve your spoken or written French, and those are designated ULL, and content courses, where language learning is not the primary aim, but where you're studying something else using your working knowledge of French language. So, for example, that might be literature, visual culture, history, linguistics, or perhaps cinema. And the majority of our modules are taught in French. Again, it depends which combination of options you take throughout the course of your studies, but we're thinking between 65 to 80% of your modules would be taught in French. Now, I should point out that that would, of course, be lower if you were doing one of the English language minors, for example, business, international relations, or history. Some of the history modules are in French. Okay, next slide. In your language studies, we target the 5 key skills. So, reading, writing, listening, speaking continuously, as if you were giving a presentation, for example, and also speaking conversationally in a range of different registers. So, for example, we would certainly expect you to be able to distinguish between appropriate ways of presenting yourself orally when you're in a friendship group, but also when you're in a formal job interview or in an academic situation. Next slide, please. Yep. And throughout the 3 years of the programme, we have what we call the different conceptual pillars. These represent a progression in terms of your skills and your competencies. So in first year, BA1, we're very preoccupied with ways of reading. We're encouraging you to explore and encounter a wide range of texts. And I use the term text in its broadest sense. That's not just reading material. We can regard anything as a text. We can regard visual material, cinema. We can regard the city of Paris itself as a text to be read. And BA1 is all about getting to grips with ways of reading. In second year, we want you to take a more sophisticated perspective and to move beyond reading and comprehending, to start to critique and to theorize the texts that you are engaging with. And that will require you to engage with a wide range of ideas and approaches, which will probably be quite new to you. The idea is that it should be stretching your competencies and your ways of dealing with different kinds of cultural artifacts. In year 3, the progression is into ways of knowing. And we want you to take an autonomous approach to the skills base that you have acquired in years 1 and 2, allowing you to specialise and to follow your interests. Most clearly in a research project in which you will be able to choose a topic in consultation with your teachers and be supervised as you undertake that and put that project together independently. Okay, next slide. Okay, so outline of what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. So in year 1 on the single honours French, you've got to do intensive grammar and core writing skills, 3 hours per week. This is really important because your competence in French language underpins your access into all the content modules, your capacity to write, to analyse, to appreciate different registers of language, and to produce written and oral material. We also work on your oral proficiency development, and particularly in the area of compétences professionnelles. So CV development and job interview practice is part of what we cover with you to get you ready for internships and part-time jobs. You'll also take Understanding Paris, French Culture and Context, Histoire et Histoire, Social, Political and Cultural Issues from the Revolution to the Present Day, and Issues in Contemporary French Politics. Now, the last of those modules, Issues in Contemporary French Politics, is taught and assessed in English, and it's a module which is also taken by the international politics students. But the others are taught and examined in French. So you're having a high level of exposure to French language in the classroom as well as outside. And across the year, that will average around 10 contact hours per week. Okay, next slide. In year 2, you start to define your interests. You continue with your compulsory language courses, advanced grammar, advanced oral proficiency, and an introduction to translation, French to English and English to French. There will be another core content module, which is going to be focusing on critiquing and theorising those skills that I talked about in terms of the conceptual pillars. And then the rest of your credits, you have free choice from the catalogue of modules which are available up to 4 hours per week. So you might choose to privilege modules taught in French. You might choose to look at world literature, art history, linguistics, or you might choose to take some of the modules which cover comparative literature, media studies, history, queer politics, for example, which are taught in English. Okay, and you're up to around 11 contact hours per week there. Okay, and year 3, you continue with advanced translation and advanced French discourse, written and oral, to sharpen up those language skills to get you ready for whatever you're going to be doing next. You're working on your research dissertation, which actually it may be presented as a traditional dissertation, or it might be presented as a portfolio, which would lend itself to, for example, multimedia approaches. And as well as that, you're choosing research-led specialist content modules, which is where the lecturing staff use their own research knowledge and activities to, as the basis of the teaching that they do in those modules. And there's quite a wide range. So again, history, politics, literature, urbanism, linguistics, comp lit, post-colonial literature, French North African history, bande dessinée, which is comic strip, and cinema studies are all among our current offerings. And you're looking at around 9 contact hours per week. Slightly fewer contact hours, but you have a bigger reading and independent study workload. Moving on now to the major minors. For each of those modules, the major occupies 90 credits of your learning each year, and the major takes up 90 credits, the minor takes up 30. Now, within all the French major programs, your 90 credits have to include 30 credits of core language and also 60 credits of content modules, which would come out of the French list. Okay. Your other 30 credits go to whatever your minor is. Okay, so next slide. If you're doing history, in year 1, you start with Histoire et Histoire, which is the post-revolutionary history introductory module. Then in year 2, you take any 2 out of the 3 listed there. So French political thought, France, Britain and Empire, history of sensibilities and emotions. Then in year 3, you continue by taking 2 of the following. So French republicanism, French colonialism in North Africa, fin de siècle, politics and ideology, or there's potential for you to take your research dissertation on an approved history topic. Okay, next slide. Okay, if you're doing the business minor, in year 1, we look at fundamentals of management and marketing. Year 2, economics for business and European business contexts. And in year 3, financial accounting and introduction to entrepreneurship. Now, for the financial accounting, candidates sometimes ask us if they have to have a mathematics qualification. And no, you don't need to. The module is designed to be accessible to people who don't have a specific mathematics qualification. Okay, next slide. Finally, international relations. Your minor modules include doing international politics, theories and actors in year 1, doing international politics methods in year 2, and doing international politics practices in year 3. And those modules are taken in class with the international politics degree students. So the groups do mix. Okay. Now, moving on to the BA IP. Just to clarify, just to emphasise, all of the modules here are taught and assessed in English. And your teaching takes place through a mixture of lectures where you will be all together as a group, small group seminars, maybe 10 to 12, and the learning labs, which are around that size, or possibly slightly bigger, um, according to the topic and the theme that you're studying. Okay. So the seminars, they're informed discussion around set topics, and the format can vary according to what you're doing. So there might be input from student presentations individually or in groups. There may be role plays. There may be open discussion of reading material that you've prepared. And the learning labs, as the name suggests, they are more experimental. So for example, going out and doing site visits, engaging with different kinds of actors who are involved in the international politics sphere. The labs are designed to be more hands-on, whereas the seminars are a more traditional academic format. Okay, so in year 1, you've got the doing international politics, theories and actors, your learning lab on non-state actors, the order and security module, and alongside the French studies students, you're doing issues in contemporary French politics. Of course, you are here in France studying politics. We want you to have a sense of what is actually going on and to give you the tools to make sense of French politics as part of your everyday life. Okay, and you're looking at 9 contact hours there. Okay, year 2. Continuation with doing international politics, learning lab, and a research project or portfolio is also introduced. So that's 90 credits, and that also allows you to choose 2 15-credit modules from the list which you have below underneath. I'm not going to read through all of that. It might be worth mentioning at this point that we don't guarantee to offer all of the stated modules in every year. members of staff may go on leave, they may go on sabbatical, for example. But that gives you a broad overview of the range of modules that we have available to us. And again, 9 contact hours per week. Okay, and year 3, continuation, doing international politics, learning lab, and a further research project, and the option to choose 2 modules from the electives, which the list there is given um, to show the range of materials that, the range of modules that you would have available to you. So, from colonialism, trauma and transmission, post-colonial fictions, to a range of theory modules. Okay, and 8 contact hours per week, but once again, you have more reading material and, more written material to produce also. Okay. Okay, so once again, the major minor model, 90 credits in the major, 30 in the minor. So if you are taking the international politics major with a French minor, you are obliged to have 15 credits of core language in each year of study. Okay, but you can also have 15 elective credits. Now that could be a language module, you might choose to do a translation module, but you might also choose one of the content modules looking at literature or history or linguistics, for example. Okay. So, international politics with French. The minor requires you to take 30 credits of language in first year. So you would be doing the written and oral French module, which is designed for post A-level or equivalent competence. In year 2, you carry on with 15 credits of advanced French language, but you can also choose another 15 credits from the French Studies course catalogue. And similarly, in year 3, advanced French discourse with another French studies module worth 15 credits. Okay, and that minor adds up to 4 contact hours per week. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through that full list of potential modules, but you will see that there is quite a range of possibilities for optional study for your electives in second and third year, always with the proviso that we don't guarantee to run all of them in every year of study. Okay. Students often ask where they get to live. When I interview candidates on the phone, I always explain that we don't have our own halls of residence, but we do work in partnership with a number of Paris's private residences, and Nexity in Nexity in the 12th, in Volve and in Quai d'Ivry, they represent some of the residences that we use, and our student ambassadors and student service representative Claire will be able to tell you more about that. And next slide. Finally, just to sum up with some of the benefits of living and studying abroad. Regardless of which program you're on, whether it's IP or French, you are going to get accelerated language learning. Just the fact of being in France and operating on a day-to-day basis in a French-speaking country is going to force you to learn a bit of the language, even if you're on the Single Honours International Politics programme. And I should point out that for people who have very basic language, French language skills on that programme, we do offer non-credit bearing French classes to give you support as you're developing the key language skills that you need. Alongside that, you develop enhanced cultural awareness. The two go hand in hand. It's not really possible to learn a language without learning enhanced cultural awareness. In so doing, you are challenging yourself, and this will help you to grow in confidence as well as in maturity. And these attributes are incredibly useful when it comes round to thinking about what you're going to do after your bachelor's. Whether it's further study, whether it's going into the job market, these are key attributes. And Frank, who was a very good student who graduated with us BA French Studies last year, he notes the classes are small, you get to know your lecturers one-to-one, which is really nice. You wouldn't normally get that. It gives you the opportunity to move away, which is to say to move away from home, but you still receive the same benefits as if you were studying in the UK. So it's a supported way to do study abroad from quite a young age, and it offers quite unique benefits. Okay, so I think that's my section completed now, and I will hand over for student experience.
Thank you very much, Louise. So as Kate said before, I'm Claire Miller. I'm Head of Student Services at ULIP, and I'm joined by Nancy and Hind, who are two of our current students, and we're going to go through some common questions and for them to be able to share a bit of their experience. And please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat, which we'll pick up at the end. So let's start with the first question. Okay, so could you please tell us about yourselves? That's a broad question, but if we narrow it down a little bit, maybe just to where you're from and what you're studying, what you have studied, that'd be great.
Hey everyone, do you hear me clearly? Okay, so my name is Hind. I'm Australian Lebanese and I transferred to ULIP last year. So this year I'm in my third year and I'm studying international politics.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I study French with IR and I'm in my third year and I come from Somerset, England.
Thank you. So why did you decide to study at the Institute in Paris?
Personally, I was torn between universities in England, like in the UK, and then in London specifically, and then Paris. And then I thought that ULIP is literally the best of both worlds because, as Frank in the slides, the alumni was saying, we get the same benefits as if we're studying in the UK. But then when we step outside of the classroom and then being confronted on a daily basis with the French culture, people speaking to us in French, and then studying about that in class, I think we get the best of both worlds. So I think this is really fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of reasons for me. I wanted to do politics and I felt that it was important to do a language alongside that. And there's no better way to learn a language than to be fully immersed in the culture and kind of be forced to speak it on a daily basis. And it was a really great decision and it's really helped my French and politics come along.
Thank you. Okay, so next question. Oh, was it difficult? Oh, no, what is it like to study in a small university? So to give a bit of context, there are about 220 students studying at University of London Institute in Paris. So that's obviously quite different to other institutions. So what's your perspective on studying in a small university?
Yeah, it's quite small, but I really like the sense of community that we have at ULIP. I really like the fact that each professor knows each one of us personally. And like moving abroad can be very overwhelming at some times. So the fact that it's a small community, we get to experience these feelings as a collective. So it gets us even closer together. But yeah, I really like it. I think each student gets so much attention and we're treated like personally and not as if just another student.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you do need to be a bit more proactive than you would potentially have to be in other universities that are slightly larger. Like you have to be more aware of making friends and making the effort to go to events because not all living together. It's not the same kind of immersion. But I really like it. I came from a really small village and it was kind of big, overwhelming. And obviously Paris is such a big city and a big place that you have your little safe space in Paris and it feels like a little home away from home because you're surrounded by English people and it's like that. It's very nice. It's a comforting feeling, and again, having the like one-on-one relationship with lecturers, it's really nice. It's like a tight-knit community. It's really lovely.
Thank you. So we already talked a little bit about the difficulty of moving abroad and being a big city and it being overwhelming. Is there like something specific that you found challenging, or that you thought would be challenging actually wasn't that difficult?
I definitely did not like the paperwork, like visa stuff, Navigo stuff, but honestly, like student services were very active and then very helpful. So I think this aspect got a bit easier for me. But yeah, it's definitely something that is very overwhelming and I hate doing it. But beside that, nothing really.
Yeah, I was really, really nervous. I remember the day before coming, I was so stressed, and I don't like. I think it would probably be the same if I was going somewhere in the UK, because in reality, Paris isn't that far from the UK. You can go home very easily if you need to, and again, like you have that tight knit community, so you feel very quickly immersed, and also you have the same students around you doing exactly the same process, and you almost bond because of that. And so like it seems like a big thing, but it really doesn't feel like it once you're doing it.
Okay, now talking about Paris more specifically, what is the best thing about Paris? So that's some of the positive things that I've found about Paris, and perhaps if you can say a little something about the living cost, because obviously being a capital city, that's the perception that people will have about the city.
What I really like about Paris is doing ordinary things feels extraordinary. Like I tend to appreciate life more often in Paris than I do at home, because just like strolling through the narrow streets, stumbling into like a cute cafe, or just going on a flea market on a Sunday, I think life, even though it's a big city, life can be slower here, and we tend to appreciate more the little moments. But what I really like is the fact that we get to study politics about France and Paris, and then we step outside and get to be immersed in it and experience it. It's not like we're just passive learners, but we're also like we feel we're part of something greater. And I really like this aspect. Can definitely be expensive, but there's so many things that we can do for free. And that what I was saying is that we learn to appreciate life more often in the little moments, because you could literally not spend a single euro in a day and have so much fun. So yeah, we could also work on the side. So
I don't think I have like a best thing about Paris. I think it's all amazing. Like I live really close to the university. I walk there every day, and I walk across Pont Alexandre 3, which is this magical bridge, and I walk in between Grand Palais and Petit Palais, and it's just an incredible, like, I live here every morning. I have that like this is my city. And because Paris is quite small, you discover it quite quickly, and you know the places that you have, and like it becomes almost yours. Like I feel like Paris is mine, like it's my little thing. But the living costs, it is expensive, but I don't think it's more expensive than other capitals. And I think also there's ways around it. There's a lot of free things for students. There's a lot of free events hosted by Erasmus and things. So there are definitely ways to survive without spending too much money.
So what was your first year accommodation like? Obviously, Hin, what was your second year accommodation like, perhaps, as you joined us last year? And can you tell us where you live now, if it's a flat share, studio flat?
So I've always lived on my own. I've got my own studio through Le Bon Coin, which is an application. But I know a lot of people live in accommodation during their first year, and then once they make friends, they live in. They have flatmates during the second year. I know that many students at ULIP use Paris Rentals, which is a really good website. And whenever they know that you're a ULIP student, they're very helpful, and they facilitate the whole thing for you, because we've been like working with them for the past 5 years, even more. And there's a lot of application that you can look through, but it's hard to find an apartment in Paris. So I definitely recommend living in student accommodation the first year at least.
Yeah, I lived in Estudines for my first year, and I can't speak highly enough of it. It was really lovely. When I moved there, it was brand new. Like, we didn't have Wi-Fi for the first kind of 2 weeks or something. Like, it just been opened. But it was so lovely. It's this, you get your studio flat and you have your own kitchen, your own bathroom, a big room. And now I live in the 8th. I live just next to the Champs-Elysees, actually. And I have a flatmate. And we found our flat on Se Loger. But again, it is really difficult. So you have to just keep going. And it took ages to find the flat. And we've been here for 2 years now. But you have to just persist and keep looking and keep sending your applications to people.
Also, the university can act as a guarantee, and I discovered that last year through the Student Hub, which was really helpful if you do not have a guarantor in Paris.
Yeah, some agents or landlords will require you to have a guarantor in France. Obviously, a lot of our students don't have parents in France, so we can offer to act as guarantor, which enables students to secure a flat more easily. Okay, next questions. Do you work alongside your studies?
I currently do not work. I was working last year in a restaurant as a waitress, and it was very manageable. I had 10 contact hours, and I could easily work during the weekend, but this year I'm not working. But I know a lot of people do work.
Is that because you wanted to focus on your studies for the final year?
Exactly. For the last year, I wanted to make the best out of it because it passed so quickly.
I'm an au pair, so I do some au pairing just like 20 minutes from where I live, and I do that 3 nights a week, and that's, I think, a really good way to find a job in Paris. There's a lot of need and demand for English speaking au pairs, and I was lucky that I found it through somebody that was at ULIP already, and so when they decided they didn't want to do it anymore, I then applied, and that was how I got it. So I do that alongside, and I don't find it's too much. I actually quite enjoy it.
Yeah, we were talking before about kind of ways of making Paris cheaper. Obviously, being a living au pair is an option as well, which means that you work in exchange for your accommodation. Sometimes there can be demands on the family for you to work too many hours. So I think kind of having a clear arrangement of a specific number of days or hours per week, it kind of is easy in terms of managing kind of your workload and your relationship with the family. Okay, do you take part in any clubs of societies?
Yeah, we have a wide range of societies at ULIP. They're very diverse. We have cooking, wine society, we have ski society, model UN. Personally, I'm in the Model UN Society, and last week we had a collaboration with the American University in Paris, and it went really well. I'm also in the Movie Society, so Cinema Society, and we watched Midnight in Paris 2 weeks ago, and it was really good. So really be involved. There's so many things going on. You just need to be involved.
Yeah, I haven't taken part in many this year, but I went to both of the ski trips. So in first year and second year, I went on the ski trip. And it's running again this year, but I tore my ACL, so I can't go. But that's really fun and would definitely recommend that to anyone. I didn't know how to ski. I still don't really know how to ski, but it was really fun. And it's cost effective. It's done well. It's well organized.
Okay, difficult questions here. Maybe. What are your plans after you graduate?
So I took this linguistic elective last year, and I did not know that I loved linguistics before this class, but I had an amazing teacher. I fell in love with linguistics, and I think I'm planning on majoring in something related to that later on. I do not have an idea yet because I haven't done my master research, which I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah.
I want to go on to do a master's. So I'm currently looking at going to Sciences Po to do a master's it's a joint master's between Sciences Po and Columbia in journalism. And then if not, then Warwick University have an amazing journalism master's, which is joint with a university in Melbourne. So I'll do a year in Melbourne and a year in Warwick. Should be cool.
Great. Okay, so this is another potentially difficult questions. What are your 3 top tips for prospective students who are watching us today?
My first tip would be to treat Powers as your campus, not only the university. I think Powers is an extension of university experience, and you will learn so many things just by walking around. There is history in every building, in every corner, and it's just beautiful. My second tip would be to make full advantage of all the resources available to you, because sometimes we're just like, I discovered so many things, but just I didn't know that they existed. We also have a free access to the American Library in Paris. Be involved. There's so many things going on when it comes to societies and clubs. There's so many events and conferences and like people who come and talk about very interesting stuff at university. So yeah, be involved, make the best out of it, pass it so quickly, and just enjoy Paris. This is the best. Enjoy Paris.
I agree with all of those, and I asked around my friends and said, what would you say to your first year self, or just about to come here? And everyone said, get your visa sorted early, because that's a lengthy process and it can take a while. And I didn't have my visa until December of first year, and that was not a good idea. It was too much stress and awful planning. So get your visa sorted early. Go to the freshers events. So there's normally a freshers week, and it's really worth it. You don't necessarily need to go to the ball at the end, but that's not saying don't go. That's just it costs more, and you don't have to do that. But definitely go to the events during the week, because that's how you make your friends. That's how you make your connections. And that's I think a really nice way of getting involved and meeting everyone and not feeling too lonely. And also, last tip, check if your flat is furnished or not before going and buying loads of things. So I went to TK Maxx before coming over, went crazy, bought loads of homeware, loads of everything, and then turned up and my flat was fully furnished. So I didn't need any of it. So just check, just verify that.
Thank you. So that's a great range of like very practical and kind of inspiring tips there. So so we've come to the end of the questions that we'd put together. So thank you very much for listening. I think some questions have already been put in the chat box. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to add those. And hopefully Kate is now going to ask some of those questions.
Yes. Yeah, as you said, Claire, some of them have been answered already, but I'll pick out some of the ones that still need answering. So there was a question about clubs and societies, which have been answered. Ali asked, what level of English proficiency do students need to be successful?
Louise, maybe that's one for you.
Yeah, if you're not an English speaker, if you're not a native speaker of English, or if you haven't studied in, an English international school, we normally ask for the IELTS. Oh gosh, Claire, can you remember what level it is on is it 6.5 or 7?
It's no 7 is for the MA, so I think it's
6.5. Yeah.
6.5.
You will find this on I'm going to look for it on the website actually, so we can post it up. But we do ask for an IELTS pass, which shows a certain level of competence on written English. Okay, so we will we'll check that and maybe post that into the resume that we send out. Okay.
Thanks, Louise. The next question was from Tom. He asks, is there a guarantee that you get accepted if you have the grades required?
No. Yeah, I'm joking. Yeah. But the process, we go through the UCAS process. Okay. After we've reviewed your UCAS application, we then ask you to do a short interview with us. That's 15 minutes by telephone. And on the basis of your UCAS application and your interview, we then make a conditional offer or not, depending on, how we appraise your application. So you then have to wait until your exams come out, and if you meet your conditional offer, then yes, you would be accepted. If you don't meet your conditional offer, it really depends from year to year. We are generally able to take candidates who are perhaps one grade down. Beyond that, it really depends on how things go. Okay, so our standard offer for both programs is currently ABB on A levels, and we have a range of equivalents as well. Okay.
Then another question that relates to grades was, do you look at EPQ grades when considering offers to prospective students?
Not really. We prefer to focus on the A levels, and the reason for this is that we find the EPQ grades are frequently outliers. They're very often higher than the A levels or significantly lower than the A levels, and that's because people sometimes they are hugely invested in their EPQ, but also sometimes it's the thing that gets put aside when they feel they're under pressure in the exams. So we do tend to find that they're a bit of an outlier, and we prefer to focus on the actual A levels. Okay.
Thanks, Louise. Then I have a couple of questions potentially for our current students. How do you find that the Parisians treat UK students? Are they welcoming? Have you managed to make genuine French friends?
Sorry, I'll let you go.
Go ahead. No, you go.
I think they can be a bit off-putting and a bit scary to begin with, and you make an effort, you go into cafes and you speak French, and they will just reply in English, and it gets you down to begin with, but you do just have to keep making the effort. But the French students, I think, are very open and very friendly, and I have a French boyfriend and I'm now friends with all of his friends, and there's not too much of like a culture difference, and actually that they're surprisingly friendly, and I think the stereotypes are not really true, apart from in cafes and restaurants. If you make an error with your grammar, then you will be told off.
I definitely agree with Nancy. I think the stereotype is not true. Like, they're not as cold or whatever, how they portray the French people to be. Like, this is not true. I have so many French friends, and yes, French people tend to speak back in English if they felt like an accent, but I do not think they do that out of rudeness. I just think they do that to make it easier for you, but just continue and speak in French. There's no better classroom than Paris, so it's great. It's nothing to be scared about. It's really fun. This is part of the excitement, and I do not think I did face any cultural shock coming to Paris. It's just like any different city. It's even funnier. So
Thanks, Finn. Then I have another one for Nancy. Do you find it expensive to go back to the UK in the holidays?
It depends when you're going. So you have to be clever about like booking, say if you're taking the Eurostar, booking it well in advance, and booking it on days that it's not peak. But I find that ULIP's dates actually really suit the travel days, which aren't too expensive. And I fly because Bristol Airport's really close to me, and the flights are really cheap. You can get them for like €30. So I don't think it's too expensive. No, like the thing that would be more expensive is getting trains in England from London to wherever you live. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. And then another one for Louise. What is the possibility of studying most majors in the French language?
The only sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is the probability of studying most majors in the French language? So I guess it's like, could you do the whole thing in French?
Okay, if you do the French Studies programme, there are going to be some modules that will be taught at least partly in English. For example, in the final year, I teach French to English translation, and I teach that through the medium of English. There is a good range of modules which are delivered and examined in French. But really, it's very much about how you want to prioritise things. Is it most important for you to study a module in French, or is it, for example, more important for you to engage with the content of the module? Let's say maybe it's a visual culture module, and you choose that because it's you choose that despite the fact that it's taught in English. Do you see what I mean? So you can choose to maximize your French modules, and it would probably take you to up to about 80%, something like that. You will probably do some English modules inevitably as part of your studies. We don't actually think that's a bad thing. It's actually quite good to do some of your work in English. That will probably serve you quite well in your post-ULIP life. Okay.
Thanks, Louise. When applying for student finance, is the university classed as being in London, or would it be classed as outside of London?
The answer is neither. There's a third category, which is overseas. So there's a London rate, a non-London rate, and there's an overseas rate, which is pretty much exactly in between the London and non-London rate.
Thanks, Claire. Grace asks, at what point should I be applying for a visa?
So you can apply for a visa 2 to 4 months before your planned travel. So that means that usually you would be doing it like May, or like between May and July. Obviously, if you've got a conditional offer, that means that you're running a risk of applying for a visa, getting a visa, paying for a visa, and possibly not getting in August if you don't meet the conditions of your offer. It is possible to do it very last minute, mid-August, when you get your results. We do get a few students via clearing every year who have to do it last minute. If you're lucky and everything kind of goes smoothly, it is possible to get your visa back within 5 weeks, which is when you would need to be in France. But if not, there's a possibility of doing what obviously Nancy seemed to have done, is like come to France on your 90 days Schengen like visitor visa, and then get your visa sorted out when you go back home for Christmas mid-December. Because like the 90 days would kind of cover the time that you need to be at ULIP for the first semester. That is a bit stressful when you're kind of counting the days of how many days you're allowed to be in France, and kind of being nervous about getting an appointment in time for before the Christmas closure. So ideally you would do it over the summer, but it is possible to do it later.
Thanks, Claire. And another visa question from Cosmo. Do you need a visa if you have a European passport?
No, just make sure your European passport is kind of valid, that you're not going past the expiry date. But yeah, if you've got a European passport, or if you have the possibility of getting a European passport before coming here, if you've got an Irish grandmother or something, it's definitely worth doing. It will kind of make your life easier to have EU citizenship.
We still have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to pick a couple out that feel like they're going to be beneficial for the most people. Simon asks, are the lecturers English speaking, or are those teaching in French native French speakers?
We're a bit of both. Quite honestly, we're a mixed bag. We've got some Anglophones who speak French. We've got some Francophones who speak English. We've got some people we've got Americans, we've got Italians. Everybody here speaks French and English, and some of them speak additional languages as well. So you might be taught a course. For example, I teach some first-year material and actually some third-year material in French, but you might be taught by native French speakers as well. Paris, it's worth saying, is an incredibly cosmopolitan city, and you will hear French spoken in all sorts of accents and in all sorts of idioms across the city, and ULIP is just like that in miniature, I would say.
Thanks, Louise. perhaps a question for you, Claire. Are students allowed to use other universities' facilities in Paris, for example, other libraries?
So there's the American Library that I mentioned earlier. So we subscribe our students to the American Library. And then there's a huge network of public libraries in Paris, which are not just for French university students, they're just for anyone. If you're just looking for a study space, sometimes you can just walk in. If you want kind of borrowing rights, you need to subscribe, which is just like a bit of admin to get a membership. But it's very easy to access libraries throughout Paris.
Thank you. We had a question about if any modules were offered online.
No, it's all like face-to-face teaching, on-site teaching only.
Thank you. And do the holidays coincide with French school holidays?
Not really. So, I mean, our term times, teaching would start kind of third week of September up until mid-December. There's a reading week in the middle, which is next week, first year at ULIP, which coincides with one of the 2 weeks of school holidays in France. And then classes start up again third week in January. Again, you have a reading week in February, which normally coincides with the French school holidays. And then teaching stops mid-April, and then exams in May. So it's similar to the university calendar system, but not the French school holidays.
Thank you. And then I have a question from Catherine, probably directed at our student ambassadors. What type of events are offered to first years at the start of the year? Maybe Nancy, since you did first year.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember now, but there was one day that we did a boat cruise, we did a picnic, there was a karaoke night, there was all sorts, everything. I'm trying to think what else we did. And it is kind of like a pick and choose thing. Oh, we did a salsa night as well. You don't have to go to all of them, but if you pay for the wristbands, you get access to all of them. So it's like, you know, if you go to one and you're too tired the next day, it doesn't matter. But it's just a really good way to go and socialize. And there's lots of things. If you don't want to go out at night, you don't have to. If you want to go out during the day, there's all sorts.
Thanks, Nancy. And then another question for Louise. What TOEFL score is required? I know that's quite a broad one.
Oh, off the top of my head, I would have to check that. I think on the website we quote from IELTS rather than TOEFL, but we can check that certainly. And I mean, what I would recommend that you do is you go to our website and you look at the entry requirements, which is it's quite specific. It will give you those scores there.
Thanks, Louise. And then one question from Kira, which relates to UCAS. So the question is, if I change my mind on a course after my UCAS application has been seen, can I request to change the course?
Yes, as long as you still meet the entry requirements for that other course. So if you were offered a place on the international politics French, you can't then add the French minor unless you also meet the entry requirements for the international politics with French course. But otherwise, provided we have space, we'll be flexible with the change of program.
Brilliant, thank you. That's actually all we have time for today. The session is about to end, but I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who made the time to join, and also to our presenters, especially to our student ambassadors. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak today. It was very, very beneficial. We'll follow up with a recording of this session if you missed anything. But again, thank you from all of us for joining today.